All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into something that's really got people talking, the CBP One app. We've gotten a bunch of articles from listeners about it. And honestly, when I first heard about it, I thought, okay, it's an app, helps with travel logistics, whatever. But the more you look into it, the more you realize this thing is at the center of a huge debate about immigration.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, right? It's like one minute it's helping schedule cargo inspections, the next it's playing a key role in how people seek asylum at the border.
Exactly. And it's not just about setting appointments at ports of entry anymore, though I'm sure that's still a big part of it. Now they're collecting biometric data, fingerprints, facial recognition, the whole shebang.
Yeah, that's the part that's really got people fired up. The privacy concerns are like off the charts. You're escaping a bad situation, trying to start a new life, and you have to hand over all this personal information. It makes you wonder, how secure is that data? Who has access to it?
Exactly. And that brings up another issue, access. What about people who don't have smartphones
Or
or reliable internet?
Oh, 100%. The digital divide is a real thing, and this app, while maybe helpful for some, could actually make things worse for others. Imagine you're desperate, need asylum, and you can't even charge your phone. It's a harsh reminder that not everyone has equal access to technology.
It's like technology is never truly neutral, is it?
Not at all. It reflects the values, the biases of the people who create it and use it. And in this case, it's become this lightning rod for the entire immigration debate.
Speaking of which, we've got data talk about Senator Hawley's claim that migrants are using the app to board flights without proper ID.
Right. That was a pretty explosive accusation.
And then you have the Department of Homeland Security pushing back, saying, hold on, everyone gets screened, we're doing biometric checks,
And of course, you can't forget former President Trump jumping into the mix.
and calling it the Kamala phone app, claiming it's proof of an open border agenda. It's like everyone's latched onto this app to fit their own narrative.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This little app has become a symbol in this much larger, much more complicated debate about immigration.
It's almost like a Rorschach test, right? People see the CBP One app, and they just project their whole view on immigration onto it.
Yeah, it's become this weird litmus test, like you're either for it or against it, and there's no in between.
Exactly.
Which I think speaks to a bigger issue. We've got to be able to have these nuanced conversations about technology, security, human rights. And right now, it feels like that's really hard to do.
Absolutely. And this isn't just an American thing, is it? I feel like I've read about similar apps being used in other countries, too.
Oh, yeah, totally. Governments all over the world are using template to manage migration, AI border control, apps that track asylum seekers' movements, you name it.
Hmm. And I guess on the surface, some of that might sound efficient, maybe even more humane. Less bureaucracy, less waiting around in limbo.
Yeah, the pitch is always win-win. Better security and a better experience for migrants.
Right.
But like with anything, there's always a trade-off. Unintended consequences you don't see right away.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, take algorithmic bias. We talked about facial recognition tech and how it can be less accurate with darker skin tones.
Right, right.
Well, that same bias is often built into the algorithms that power these systems.
So you could have someone flagged, denied, not because they're actually a threat, but just because the algorithm is flawed.
Exactly. Which obviously raises huge concerns about fairness and discrimination, especially when you're talking about something as life-changing as immigration.
It's almost like we're outsourcing these huge decisions to machines without really understanding what we're giving up in the process.
100%. That's the ethical dilemma, isn't it? Are we okay with algorithms making decisions that could determine someone's entire future? Or do we need to draw a line somewhere?
It's a big question, and honestly, one I don't have an easy answer to.
No.
But it's definitely something we need to be thinking about.
Agreed. Because this technology isn't going anywhere. If anything, it's only going to get more sophisticated.
So then what do we do? How do we even begin to make sure technology is used ethically and responsibly when it comes to immigration?
Well, I think step one is talking about it, bringing these issues to light, raising awareness about the potential downsides, and encouraging people to think critically about the role tech plays in our lives.
Yeah, and that includes listening to the people most impacted by this technology, right? The migrants themselves.
100%. Their voices are so often left out of the conversation, even though they have the most at stake.
It's true. You mentioned earlier that this app has become this political football. Well, I was prepping for our deep dive, and I came across this exchange between Senator Vance and Governor Walz during their VP debate. They got into it about the CBP One app, like really got into it. The moderator even had to mute their mics.
Oh, wow. I don't think I saw that. What was the gist?
So Vance was hammering the app, right?
Mm.
Calling it a tool for basically just waving through anyone who wants legal status. He called it, and I quote, a wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand.
Oh, boy.
But here's the thing. The moderator, Margaret Brennan, actually fact-checked him right there, pointed out that a lot of immigrants using the app are entering the U.S. legally.
That's so important, though, because it gets to the heart of why we're having this conversation. We have to separate fact from fiction. There's so much misinformation about this app and its purpose.
Oh, absolutely. It's like that old saying, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. And with social media, it is really hard to know what's true anymore.
For sure. We're constantly bombarded with information from all sides. It's our responsibility to be critical thinkers, to question our biases, to look for different perspectives and try to get the full picture.
It's about going deeper than the headlines, the sound bites, really trying to understand the nuances of a complicated issue.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It really does feel like we're at this crossroads,
Totally.
Yeah.
Where technology, politics, and actual human lives are all intersecting.
Yeah. And it's exciting, but also kind of terrifying at the same time.
No, for sure, because on the one hand, you have these amazing tools, right? Like, we have the technology to make immigration more efficient, maybe even more humane. But on the other hand, there's that risk that those same tools could be used to discriminate, or they could lack transparency, even cause harm unintentionally. It's a tough one.
It's like walking a tightrope, right?
Yeah.
Like every step matters. And we really need to think carefully about how we proceed as a society.
Couldn't agree more. We can't just blindly adopt every new tech without considering the ethical side of things. We have to have those hard conversations, even when they're uncomfortable, about where the boundaries should be, what role we want technology to have.
So as we wrap up here, what's the one thing you hope listeners take away from this deep dive? The thing that sticks with them?
That is a great question. I guess I'd say, don't fall for the hype. Technology isn't a magic solution. It's not going to swoop in and solve complex social problems like immigration overnight.
If anything, it often creates new problems that we then have to solve, right?
Exactly.
So where does that leave us?
Well, I don't think there's one answer, but I do think the first step is awareness. We need to be critical thinkers, question what we see, understand that technology can be biased, and we've got to demand transparency from the people creating these systems, the people using them.
And never forget the human element in all of this, right? Behind every data point, every algorithm, there is a real person with real experiences.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. At the end of the day, this isn't about technology. It's about our values. Who are we? How do we want to treat each other?
It's a conversation that requires empathy, listening to different viewpoints,
Couldn't agree more.
even when those views are different from our own.
And I truly believe if we can approach these conversations with open minds and hearts, we can use tech for good, while still protecting people's rights and dignity.
That's a goal worth striving for sure. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been eye-opening, to say the least.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time.